Considering Alabama hasn't even started practice for Michigan yet, pretty doggone busy weekend, I would say.
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back into Locked On Bama. Luke Robinson, that's me. Jimmy Stein, that's him. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, and thank you for making us your first listen every single day. You guys are the absolute best. We do love you so very much. Jimmy, we haven't really, it's not even time. Everybody's still kind of butthurt over Florida State not getting in. I mean, Alabama fans aren't, but that's still kind of the football talk. I mean, I'm hoping that'll cycle out. But we haven't really even gotten into Michigan practice yet. But this past weekend was a busy one. I mean, for those who don't know, I'm with the AHSAA Radio Network. Got to call some of the AHSAA games. Of course, we're going to talk about Ryan Williams, who was – and Jayden Daniels. By the way, if Ryan Williams wasn't at the Super 7, Jayden Daniels would have been the best player by far. I mean, Cam Coleman is very, very good, and Cam Coleman looked good. But I'm telling you, Mbakwe was crazy good. Ryan Williams was crazy good. And meanwhile, Alabama got another commitment. And I guess let's start there because it sort of came out of the blue on Friday night, just a kind of a random like, wow, okay, Alabama got the number 2 edge guy for 2025 out of Florida. And his announcement, it seemed to be after either a playoff game or a state championship game. And it was just sort of, yeah, I'm going to go to Alabama. And everybody's like, all right. And then just moved on. I don't know that it was all that expected by anybody, Jimmy.
No, very not bizarre. It just goes to show how hard Alabama staff works around the clock on recruiting period, that here's a guy we haven't really talked about much. But an interesting thing about Javion Hilson, the pass rusher from Florida that committed to Alabama Friday night, he was in Alabama's camp this summer, and he was, as a young player, as a 25 guy, so he's just coming off his sophomore year, and he goes to Alabama's camp and got Alabama's attention to the point he ended up in Nick Saban's office, which is always a good sign. You go to camp and they're like, coach wants to talk to you. That's the good coach wants to talk to you, not coach wants to talk to you, bring your playbook. That's the bad, but this is good, right? So he goes up there and Alabama's like, hey, we're going to watch you play in games, and we're very interested. So he played in games this fall. Alabama monitored his progress in games, and then about midway through the season, Alabama's like, oh, yeah, you got an offer. Not only are we offering you, it's one of those takeable, committable offers. And then I guess you'd say out of the blue without much heads up, and it's late Friday night, to be honest, Eastern time, he commits to Alabama. So number 2 edge rusher, a fantastic second pass rusher to go along with Zion Grady from Troy, who's already a part of the 25 class. I'm telling you guys, I talked about this a lot 2 classes ago, 23. And I don't mean to downgrade 24, but in 23, I was telling you guys all along, this is going to be an epic group. I'm telling you all the same thing about 25. 25 is going to be Alabama's, maybe their masterpiece under Saban. Just a fantastic group. And Javion Hilson is adding to that. Just another dude to stack up with the other. 6'4", 230, outside pass rusher, crazy stats, plays against good competition, and again, earned this Alabama offer both in camp and in games. And obviously he's been a priority to Alabama, but he's in the 25 group. And obviously most recruiting attention right now is on the 24 guys that we saw in part at the Super 7 this week, Luke.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, Zion Grady already in this class too. I mean, I would say some people probably believe he's the top edge rusher. I mean, right? I mean,
he's actually behind, I think, Hilson, but when you're talking about the top 5 guys, it can go in any order, right? I mean, it's no different than the NFL draft. One guy's not clearly in front of the others. It's what you just talk about. Hey, here's the top group, and then from there, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. But Zion Grady and Javion Hilson both could be the two very best. I think it just depends on who you ask, but they're certainly in that top elite group of pass rushers in the 25 class.
Yeah, and I mean, just again, another huge pickup for Alabama. And the other thing is the next guy we're going to talk about is Ryan Williams. I really should save this whole next segment for him, but Ryan Williams was a man possessed. Now, if I'm not mistaken, Mbakwe and Ryan Williams accounted for every touchdown scored in some form or fashion for their respective teams in the 6A state championship game.
I think that's almost true. It's almost true. I don't think it's 100% true. I think it's almost true.
I think Mbakwe had,
but that might be right.
Mbakwe had 3 passing touchdowns and a rushing touchdown, I believe. And
that's right.
Ryan Williams had a rushing touchdown, 2 receiving touchdowns, and a kickoff return, and the score was 31-28.
Yeah, I guess that's right. I guess I was just thinking someone other than Mbakwe scored, but maybe you're right. Maybe it was a throw.
Well,
but they were the show.
Passing.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. That's a great point. They were the show. Ryan is he's unbelievable. He's just unbelievable. And Mbakwe is so fast. I'm really excited about these guys. And this is what blows me away, Luke. I mean, a lot of things blew me away about it. But, I was telling the wife while we were watching, I'm like, it's crazy to me that they're at Bryant-Denny and the next football games they play, assuming Ryan Williams reclassifies, we don't know yet, but assuming he does, the next football game they play in for real that counts will also be in Bryant-Denny against Western Kentucky, and that's so cool to me. It blew me away. I'm like, wow, the next time they play in Bryant-Denny or the next game they play will also be in Bryant-Denny. But this is even more amazing than that. Like you just said, to start the whole show, Luke, about Alabama practicing for Michigan, I can't guarantee this, but I believe this is true. The next time Alabama practices football, Jayden Mbakwe will be wearing an Alabama uniform and practicing.
Yeah, he said that. He actually said that.
That is crazy that we watch him play in a high school football game, and literally 2 weeks later, he's going to be out there lining up at cornerback trying to cover Isaiah Bond. I mean, that's nuts.
What a great way to jumpstart. I mean, I love that these kids can come in and participate in bowl practice. I mean, that's going to be such a great thing for them. And look, I could sit here and talk about how much I love Ryan Williams from the jump. And I know, look, I was in the press box, obviously. I called the 4A and 3A state championship games. Those were a lot of fun. I've already talked about them in a previous podcast. Floyd Bacard for Mobile Christian, by the way, brought him up. Fabulous player. I think he could be a thing for somebody. I don't know if it's Alabama good, but he's really, really good.
I like him a lot.
But anyway, while I was up in the press box, Jason Caldwell and Christian Clemente from 24/7, the Auburn site, were there. And, it was funny. It's like nobody wanted to talk about Ryan Williams because I think that there's a good Auburn contingent that still believes they have a chance to flip him. I believe they believe that. I believe Ryan Williams is going to stay with Alabama. And I feel more confident about that than ever, just having talked to some people. Now, that doesn't mean I'm 100% correct. That means it could be a totally different thing. He could eventually flip. I really, in my heart of hearts, do not believe he will. So I'm very excited about the prospects of him being in Alabama. I mean, just think about this for a second, Jimmy. Next year, you could have Isaiah Bond. You could have Ryan Williams. You could have Kobe Prentice. Ja'Cory Brooks is in the portal, but so be it. We got a pretty good receiver group next year.
Oh yeah. And I'll tell you, here's a guy that we don't really talk about at the forefront that we should about that receiver group. I think a guy that's going to have a monster year two is Jalen Hale. I think he could take a big step forward. Kobe, Kendrick Law. I'll tell you who else is. People have written him off because they're like, oh, he wasn't as impactful as we thought. But I bet Malik Benson's pretty good next year too. I mean, so that's another guy. And Alabama wide receiver group, very deep. Can't wait to see what kind of impact Ryan Williams makes immediately because, again, assuming he reclasses, that announcement's not been made, though there isn't There is an announcement scheduled for Monday morning. Let's see what it might be. But assuming he reclassifies, where's he going to fit? Because A, Alabama's wide receiver group is pretty deep and pretty good. But B, this is a guy that should be next fall in the 12th grade. And you're also not talking about the biggest guy in the world. How is he going to fit? But let me tell you, I think we'll see opinions all over the map. I think we'll see opinions from he will be Alabama's best receiver. I have a hard time believing that because of how good Bond and Hale and those guys are, more experienced, older kids. But I also think we'll see this opinion. He should be in the 12th grade. He's going to redshirt. He won't mean much to Alabama.
He's not going to redshirt.
That could be crazy wrong. That could be crazy wrong. So I'm not sure yet where I'm going to fall in. Is he going to be Alabama's best receiver? Is he going to redshirt? Probably the best bet is he will be in the first team rotation and we will see him. He's probably not quite going to be Batman, right out of the gate.
I'm going to say this.
Doesn't need to be.
Jimmy, I'm going to say this. He's going to be a heck of a lot closer to Alabama's top receiver than he is redshirting.
I agree. I would agree with that. I would agree.
Now, I need to tell everybody about PrizePicks. When we come back, I want to keep talking recruiting, keep talking some dudes from the Super 7 in particular, and also maybe bring up Jamie French, who's had a great playoff run for his team in Florida. But right now, let's talk about eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. Those are the things that bring home the winning trophy. And that's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers to roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and much, much more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, or like me, and you're into all of them, eBay Motors has got you covered. Yes, I drive a Ford Explorer, just FYI. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, you're not burning cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. And I have no idea why I put the PrizePicks overlay up. And I said I was going to talk about PrizePicks, and then I talked about eBay Motors. I was supposed to talk about eBay Motors, and I did, and I screwed up, and I'm sorry, and I'm not changing it. Now, so I'll put up the PrizePicks thing again, but eBay Motors is where you want to go. So I love it. Okay, now,
good folks.
Some other Super 7 performances. I mean, Ryan Williams is funny. Jaylen Mbakwe's team wins the championship in 6A, Clay Chalk Bowl. But I think Ryan Williams, his performance overshadowed the game itself. He was so crazy good. He scored on the first play of the game on a big pass. He scored on another long pass, like 77 yards. He returned a kickoff for a touchdown, and he scored on a running play. He was out of his mind. But it shouldn't detract from the guy who actually won the MVP, which was Jaylen Mbakwe, who was also wonderful. It's just that Ryan Williams' reputation is so good that people, I think, have forgotten about Mbakwe a little bit. And look, the thing about Mbakwe, he's not going to be a quarterback next level. He's having to play that almost out of necessity. And I mean, it's sort of like put your best athlete at quarterback in high school. And he's going to play defensive back at Alabama. He is the MVP. And here's the other thing. They beat Thompson earlier this year. Now, Thompson did lose a state championship. But they've been to the last 6 state championships. So, I mean, there's that. It's crazy how good Mbakwe is. And it's almost a bit of a shame that everybody is talking about, oh, my God, did y'all see Ryan Williams? When Mbakwe was awesome.
He was. Real fast, physical. Again, as Luke said, playing out of position. You can be a little fooled by that. You're just watching him, evaluating him in terms of complete athlete. And, boy, passes out with flying colors. I have a hard time coming up with like a great comp for him. I mean, in terms of that's how good he is and how he blows me away. I think he's another guy that can play very early. Let's remember Kool-Aid and Terrion Arnold are likely to leave early for the NFL draft. Alabama's third corner, Malachi Moore plays star, which is often manned by a cornerback. Sometimes it's manned by Terrion, for instance. So Alabama needs 3 new cornerbacks next fall. Just like we were talking about Ryan Williams, Luke, I mean, you'd be crazy to rule out Mbakwe as a potential starter. Just like I said, I think Ryan Williams will be in the first team rotation, so he will play with the first team. You can call that a starter if you want, and he may be one of the first 2 or 3 guys on the field. Mbakwe, same way. I just see him as a potential day one starter, which is so hard to do, period. And so hard to do at Nick Saban's Alabama. But when you go over the list, Luke, of these guys are day one starters during the Saban era, you're talking about a who's who of NFL stars. And boy, Mbakwe could be one of those guys.
Meanwhile, Ramsey, they lose the 5A state championship, but QB Reese was a guy that was all over the field. I thought he looked really good. I'm still not 100% sure if he's on Alabama's commitment list or not. I mean,
Yeah,
I think he is.
Yeah.
But
we're expecting him. We're expecting it. We're expecting it a BOL. We're including him on our commitment list. And I like the kid a lot myself. I agree that he's kind of because of his size. I think that's a fair question. He's not typical of the size guys Alabama normally likes inside, but God, he's a tackling machine, real instinctive. And who's to say he won't grow late, because his dad was a pretty significantly sized person in college at Auburn. I remember his dad well from West End High School. I remember the dad, and he wasn't small. So let's see what happens with QB with his size. I'm glad we're getting QB just because I had the opportunity to explain to my wife that QB Reese is not a quarterback, and we spent a good 3 minutes on that, I think, the other night, which was well worth the whole thing.
At LB is QB, but the other thing he reminds me of is Deshaun Davis, who was from Viger, went to Auburn.
I like that. I like it.
Sort of a shorter, but all he did was make a bunch of tackles. And there was another kid whose name escapes me. I think he wore number 35. And I remember this so well because in the Alabama blackout game against Georgia in 2008, the announcer said he looks like he's carrying car parts in his jersey because he was so built, but he's small. It was like started with an R, and I can't remember his name for the life of me, but he played for
Georgia. Yeah.
I think he wore number 35. I can remember all this. I can't remember his dead gum.
Undersized inside linebacker.
Yeah. And so and again, would it be great if he was taller? But if he were taller, he may not put forth that same effort,
I think another decent comp. I'm not going to say he's this guy because this guy ended up being so good, and this guy was a more heavily recruited guy, but there's some Sean Dion Hamilton in there a little bit too.
Yeah. I mean, superstar in the pro. Well, not superstar, but star in the pros, I would say. All right, Jimmy.
He played in the NFL.
And meanwhile, Jamie French, I mean, I mentioned him, the junior wide receiver, who's the number 2 receiver in the class behind Ryan Williams. If Ryan Williams does reclassify, he'll be the number 1 receiver. Jamie French, I saw some highlights from him. That guy is he's got a lot of Jerry Jeudy in him. A lot of Jerry Jeudy.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. And we'll see if Ryan reclassifies, then Ryan will be in the 24 group, and then Jamie French becomes wide receiver 1, for Alabama in the 25 group, but nothing to be ashamed of there. Jamie French is super national elite, no doubt about it.
All right, when we come back, we're going to talk about just a few odd and end things. Alabama loses a coach to Mississippi State. Jayden Daniels wins the Heisman, things like that. But right now, I want to tell you about PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. They're easily the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. With the basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League, a league created specifically for combo projections, which includes 2 or more players from different sports or leagues. For example, LeBron James plus Travis Kelce had a 10.5 combo with 3-pointers made plus receptions. That sounds like a lot of fun. Want to play alongside some of PrizePicks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill? Well, you can do that on the Community Plays section under the promos tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the PrizePicks community each and every single week. PrizePicks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in even if one of your players gets injured. Nobody else is going to do that for you except PrizePicks. Go check out PrizePicks. You will love it. PrizePicks.com. So awesome to play. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege. Use code LockedOnCollege for a deposit match up to $100. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege. Use code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to 100 smacks. It's just awesome. Go check them out. You're going to love it. All right, Jimmy. So just a few odd and end things here in the third segment. First of all, Bama, Purdue. In basketball, Alabama loses in Toronto. Grant Nelson did play. He didn't have his best game. He started out like you thought he's going to have 40 points, and he didn't end up with, I don't think he ended up with maybe 7. I can't remember. But it wasn't a ton. And, Mark Sears played out of his mind. He was great. And, but we didn't have any inside. Look, when you're playing Zach Edey, if you get the wrong officials, and again, I'm not blaming the officials. It is what it is. I mean, they beat us. But when you're playing Zach Edey, if you get officials that are going to call it, kind of touchy like they did, you're going to get a lot of guys in foul trouble. And that's what we did. We got a lot of guys in foul trouble very, very early. And then on the other side, if you get officials that are just like, hey, Zach Edey can't help it. He's a big, gigantic, what do you call those things in the monsters in he's a Mothra. He's just out there just destroying Tokyo, and he's throwing elbows and moving his arms around, and they're like, well, he can't help it, he's just so big. I mean, I get that too, because I was a big guy, and sometimes I would elbow somebody in the face totally unintentionally, and they wouldn't call a foul because they were like, it was sort of incidental contact or whatever. But when Zach Edey does it, if you get elbowed in the face by Zach Edey, it's like getting kicked in the face by Godzilla. It's just a tough thing to do. And but anyway, Alabama played their hearts out. I thought they played really, really well. Purdue's number 4 team in the country for a reason. I'm not embarrassed about it. The biggest problem is now Alabama goes to Creighton next Saturday. That's going to be a tough ball game, a tough venue. I'm giving some thought because I have no plans next weekend to looking into going to that. That could be fun.
Wow.
And then I think the next Wednesday, Alabama plays at Arizona, a team that just buried Wisconsin at home. I mean, Alabama could easily go 0 for 3 in this stretch, and all of a sudden you're 5-5 or something, and everybody's like, "What's wrong with Alabama?" Well, we would have lost to Clemson. We would have lost to Ohio State's only got 1 loss, to Purdue, to Creighton in the top 10, and Arizona, who's number 1. So, yeah, I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah, I think Alabama offensively played pretty well against Purdue. Some guys maybe not as great, but overall, offensively, you probably did what you had to do to win the game, but defensively just couldn't defend Edey, couldn't defend on the perimeter to an extent. And it's frustrating, but at the same time, look, these losses don't mean anything for March. I mean, you're not left out of the tournament because you didn't beat Purdue
That's right.
on a neutral floor. You're not going to be left out of the tournament because you couldn't beat Creighton, Clemson, or Ohio State, to be frank. I think Alabama's fine. The way I'm choosing to look at it, which is also, you may say, hey, that's a mood or an attitude. That's not an analysis. But the way I'm choosing to look at it is Alabama football wasn't ready to beat Texas in week 2. But Alabama football may be ready to beat Texas in week 15. And that's the way I'm sort of looking at that Purdue and Clemson game. Alabama's current basketball team is not ready to win games like that. Check back in with them in March. Check back in with them then. Maybe they found something that works by then. And it's up to Nate Oates, one of the great coaches in college basketball today, and his fine staff that he's assembled. It's up to them to take what they got and make it better.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And I think these games are perfect to build some character going into the SEC, which is sort of hit or miss right now. Mississippi State destroys Tulane, but got beat at home by a 25-point underdog in Southern. Auburn destroys Indiana, but, I mean, Indiana's not very good. LSU loses at home to Kansas State as a favorite yesterday. So, I mean, the SEC sort of, I don't know what we're going to get. Arkansas loses again to Oklahoma. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how the SEC plays out. Meanwhile, Alabama loses a coach to Mississippi State. Jimmy, is this a big impact at all?
Yes and no. I mean, I don't want to minimize Coleman Hutzler's contributions to the program over 2 years, and his guys this year in particular, I think were coached pretty well. Dallas Turner and Chris Braswell, maybe the best pass rushing outside linebacker duo in the country. On the other hand, a little hard to screw up. Yeah. Dallas Turner and Chris Braswell. But I do think that Coleman Hutzler in special teams and at outside linebacker made a really positive contribution to Alabama these past 2 years. But hey, I don't fret. I'm not fretting about this at all. It's just an opportunity for Nick Saban to work his hiring magic like he's done since the beginning of the Saban era. And I'm not going to rule out one bit, Luke, maybe an upgrade. And to be frank, which that's why people listen to the show. So, hoping we'll be frank. I think it's an opportunity for Alabama to upgrade at outside linebacker. And I'm talking about really in the recruiting space. I think Alabama could potentially make a big hire that helps on the trail. And hey, that sounds like something Nick Saban would be interested in.
And finally, Jimmy, Jayden Daniels wins the Heisman Trophy. I mean, not necessarily directly related to Alabama, but it does continue a string. It seems like Alabama's involved in the Heisman one way or the other. They either have a guy that wins it or they play against the Heisman. I mean, just think about the Heisman Trophy players we played against. Obviously, Jayden Daniels, Joe Burrow, Cam Newton, Johnny Manziel. Help me out, Jimmy. Who am I missing?
Oh, it seems like a bunch of them. But no, that's a great point. Well, the SEC dominates the Heisman right now. Bo Nix I mean, look at the guys last night that were finalists. You played against Bo Nix. He just happened to be at Auburn. I guess Marvin Harrison didn't get to Ohio State till 21, right? We didn't play against him in 2020. But nevertheless, how about Jalen Milroe? I think hard launched his 2024 Heisman campaign by being the leading vote getter that will return to college football in 2024. It still blows my mind that we say stuff like that out loud based on where he was in September, that you're now talking about the 2024 Heisman leader. Back in week 2, Luke, you played Quinn Ewers. And in that game, if I told you that, hey, in 2024, the Heisman frontrunners coming out of this game, you would have bet the whole freaking house it was going to be Quinn Ewers.
Oh yeah,
well, no, it's Milroe.
Although
Ewers, if Ewers comes back, he'll be on the short list.
Well, he said he's coming back, and here's what I mean. Think about this for a second. I mean, I'm not trying to get too far out there. By the way, the 2024 schedule, the actual release will be this Wednesday. Now, some schedules are coming out slowly but surely. Just really quickly, Georgia plays at Alabama and then home against Auburn back-to-back weeks. That's interesting. Good break for Auburn right there. I mean, you play on the road to Bama and then but anyway, what about this? Alabama and Texas don't play each other on the schedule next year, but all of a sudden you got to think like if Ewers comes back, Milroe comes back. I mean, I'm assuming both of them are. I mean, that could be your SEC title game.
Yep.
You think about these two played in Tuscaloosa. Ewers got the best of him. Then, maybe they play in Houston. Could be unbelievable. Then they could play in Atlanta next year. I mean, I'm getting ahead of myself, but that sounds kind of fun.
Are the 3 leading Heisman frontrunners going into the season all SEC quarterbacks? In Jalen Milroe, Carson Beck, and Quinn Ewers. Their names will all be in the conversation.
Has Beck definitively said he's coming back?
I don't think there's any definitive statement. And at this point, I don't think you can be definitive from any of them. The deadline's not till January 15th. A lot of conversations with NFL front offices, with your agent. All these kids have agents now. It's sort of legal for all of them. They do all have marketing agents. They're not allowed to have NFL agents. But hey, what do you know? Coincidence of all coincidences. A lot of these marketing agents are actually NFL agents too. So regardless, let's see what kind of advice they're all getting. Even Milroe, I don't think we can rule it out that if Milroe doesn't blow up in these playoff games, that he's not out the door and on the way to the draft. I personally do not believe that will happen. I would put the chances of that happening at less than 10%, even though I think Milroe is going to play well in the playoffs. I don't think that's going to happen.
All right, buddy. That's going to do it for today's podcast. We'll be back tomorrow with more. And until then, roll tide, everybody.
Roll Tide.